All right, there's essentially two different ways you can access your Google Drive. One is via using a web browser and going to the Drive address. The other is by using an installed app. So on a PC, you only have the one option, which is to use a browser and navigate to the Google Drive site. We'll talk about that in a second. The other option is to use a mobile device, such as a Chromebook or an Android phone or an iPhone, to access Google Drive. You can still access using the web browser, just like we are here. It'll look different because you're on a smaller form factor. However, you also have the option on a Chromebook or an Android phone or an iPhone of installing the Google Drive app. The Google Drive app does provide a significantly different look and feel to Google Drive from the web interface. In that case, it's a little bit about what you prefer in terms of how it works and how it looks and what's most comfortable to you. There are some advantages to installing the Google Drive app depending on whether or not you're using other products. For instance, if you want to insert something from your Google Drive into a Jamboard and you're using the Jamboard app, then you should install the Google Drive app. There's no reason why you can't use the web interface and the Google Drive app interface interchangeably and use them for different things whenever you want. That's perfectly allowed, and you can install both. On Shen-issued Chromebooks, we do not by default install Google Drive. It is, however, an option for you. If you go to the Play Store icon on your Chromebook, you will see an option to install the Google Drive. All right, so I'm going to talk mostly about this web interface that we're looking at right here. All right, so in talking about the web interface to Drive, first thing we need to start with is, how do you get here? A couple different ways you can get here. You can type in drive.google.com. And that will take you directly to your Drive. Now, you will get a sign-in box if you aren't already signed in up here to Google Chrome with your Google account, your Gmail account, in this case, our Shen Schools account. So one of the first things we always tell people to do is, as soon as Chrome opens up, make sure you're signed in up here. And if you're not, sign in. That avoids you having to sign into each individual Google tool like Gmail or Calendar or Drive when you go to it by signing in up here. So sign in up there. Drive.google.com is one way. When you're signed up there and you click on the plus for a new tab, you'll also get what we call the Rubik's Cube. Some people call it a waffle. It's a Google Apps menu. When you click on that, you will see all the different apps that you have access to in Google, and you can scroll down. There's even more and more and more. Some of these are made by Google. Some of these are made by third party, but the ones in the very top section are all Google ones. You can also drag and drop them to rearrange them. So Drive is the one I put in the upper left-hand corner because it's really the place where I go to start all of my work in Google, is Google Drive. So when you click on that, it takes you to the same screen that you got to by typing in drive.google.com. Okay, in the other lessons coming up in this section, we will show you how to actually utilize your Google Drive to color code things, create files, and all those folders and all those kinds of things. Right now, we just want to concentrate on how you get here and the settings that you can set for your Drive overall. Okay, so you can, once you're in your Google Drive, also click on bookmark and then add a bookmark to your toolbar here. Note that this Google Drive icon here is not a way to access your Google Drive. This icon here takes a picture of your screen and saves it to your Google Drive directly, this extension. Okay, so you can put a bookmark though on your bookmarks toolbar for your Google Drive simply by clicking on the star when you get to your Drive. So you can bookmark it, you can access it via typing the address, you can access it via the Rubik's Cube. You can also access it via the Shen Schools bookmark menu if you don't want one out here. You just want to use the one that we configure for you. So those are the three different ways you can get to the web interface of Google. All right, so let's show you some of the settings that you can change for your Google Drive. Again, we're going to take you through all these different side menus and your folders and all that after. What we really want to do is get Google Drive set up for you to start working with it. So this gear up here is the settings panel for Google Drive. So you're going to click on it and you're going to click settings. These other options may not even be available to you depending on your access levels. All right, so First thing up, it shows you how much you're using in storage. So I'm using 90 gigabytes. I make a lot of these videos. So it shows you how much you're using in storage. You have unlimited storage in your Google Drive as part of your Shen Schools account. It's much less for a private Gmail, somewhere around 5 to 15 gigabytes. Okay, so first up, I would check this box. What this box tells Google to do is whenever you drag and drop into your Google Drive a Microsoft doc, a Microsoft PowerPoint, or a Microsoft Excel file, to automatically take that file and convert it to the associated Google format, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. It does a really pretty good job at this now. The only thing it still struggles with a little bit are Google Docs that are formatted, or Microsoft Word docs that are formatted with a lot of floating text boxes. Google has a little bit of a hard time with that. And Google Slideshows, where you use a lot of animations, because quite frankly, most of the animations that are available to you in PowerPoint are not available to you in Google Slides. Okay, so those are the two types that it doesn't convert. There's no reason not to convert something, because if you don't like it, you still always will have the original file, the Microsoft file, wherever you're dragging it from to drop it in here. Usually I do this by opening up Google Drive in half my screen, and then whatever local drive or network drive I want in the other half, and dragging from one to the other. You can drag entire folders. I'd be careful about that you don't put a whole bunch of stuff in your Google Drive you really don't need. I only convert things from my F drive to my Google Drive as I use them. So that way the stuff that's left in my F drive at the end of a year or two is stuff I'm probably never going to use again. All right. You can also check this offline support. This box is particular to each machine you're using, and basically what it says is it'll create a copy of every Google Doc, Google Slideshow, and Google Sheet that you create in your Google Drive on your local machine, so that if you lose an internet connection, you can keep working on those files while you're offline. It does take up the space on that local machine, so you need to make sure you have enough room. It will not do movies and stuff like that. It only does those 3 Google formats: the docs, the sheets, and the slides. All right, how packed things are in your Google Drive screen is comfortable, cozy, or compact. You can choose what you want. The default is comfortable, and I'm comfortable with that. Okay. These suggestions are tools that Google will have you turn on and off depending on what you like. I cannot stand the quick access toolbar, so it's one of the first things I turn off. Other people love it. I think a lot of people get confused when that quick access is up there as to where they've actually stored their file organizationally, because they see some of those things up there and think, oh, it's right in my Google Drive, whereas it could be in a folder inside of a folder inside of a folder, and you can't tell that from the quick access bar. Those are just things you've used a lot or frequently or recently. Okay. Surface important people. This puts a bar at the top of your screen where if you're constantly talking to a person or to using a file, it will put at the top in a quick handy access bar, just like the quick access. I also have that turned off. And then whether you want to use the priority page as your default page is a third option there. Okay, over here we have a couple more tabs that we can look at in the settings screen. Notifications is one of them. This determines when Google will pop up messages to you about things having to do with your Google Drive. And so you can choose to turn on or off those notifications. Manage apps, most of you will never go into, but if you give an app permission to access your Google Drive, to send files to other people through email as yourself, any of the add-ons especially, you may decide later on you want to revoke that access. You no longer want to use that tool. So you can click on this Manage Access tab, and you can see all of the different companies you've given some access to your Google Drive. And a lot of these that are in mine, I've given access because I was experimenting with them to test them out, and I've decided I don't like them. So at that point, I can come in here and say disconnect this from Drive, and that company will no longer have access to anything in my Google Drive. You should always never give access to your Google Drive unless you think the company is reputable. Okay, so you can do that. You can also choose which application is used by default to open files of that type. So for instance, PDFs you may have installed Lumen PDF or Cami or any of those, and you can choose whether or not that app opens that type of file automatically. If you don't want it to, you uncheck it, and then it will not use that product. You'll have to do the open with option. Okay, so that's manage apps. So those are some of the settings for your Google Drive. Now we're going to get started using it.